Welcome to this edition of Captains of Industry. I'm Chris Bishop. Now this week we have a man by the name of Steve Tzikakis. Now he's the head of South Europe, Middle East and Africa for a company called SAP that has a very strong position in the world market at the moment. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.
If you just give us a quick taste of your company, exactly how big your market is and what you actually do.
So SAP is a $30 billion business present in more than 180 countries. We serve the world with systems that touch the back office, operations, supply chain, customers. We touch approximately 75% of the world's transactions. So we're, I would say, everywhere. More than 90% of Forbes 500 use our systems. And we touch both small, medium and large enterprise.
So obviously a big concern, but let's take it all the way back to your beginnings. Now, when you left school at the age of 17, your first experience in business, you joined the family business. Just tell us an idea of what happened there.
It was actually very abrupt and not planned from my side. My father woke me up one morning at 6 a.m. and he said, "Right, son, today's your first day at work." And it was a big shock for me. So he dragged me to the family business, small family business. It was a startup, and where he had everything laid out on a table, the samples, the price list, the order book, the map, 2 bus tickets, one from the office to the territory and one from there back home. And he said, last night was the last day that you got paid money from me, pocket money from me. You're on your own.
Just give us an idea about this family business. It was dealing in artists' rights.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds interesting.
We were selling copyrights. So basically we were an art publisher for museums and organizations that wanted to print out things using art in their content. So it was very, very difficult and hard for me to understand at the beginning. But for these 4 or 5 years during university and my master's, it was a brilliant school. And of course, when you have father and son working together, it has a lot of beautiful things, but also day-to-day friction. So
just give us an idea of that.
Well, when you put 2 strong characters together, all I can say is that it takes a few decades later in your life to remember that you're here because your father pushed you to be here, and I'm very grateful to him.
So he was a fairly hard taskmaster.
He was very, very high expectations. He wanted me to be number one in anything I had to do. So the expectation bar was always very high.
Now, when you were young, you were a teenager. You were 17 in the family business. There, were there any particular experiences that helped you in latter life that you always look back on and say that was where I did my learning?
I think it was actually the first day. I will never forget the first day. And I think another turning point in my life was when I was doing my master's in London. I remember one day we were totally broke, and that was the day that I decided I have to start something on my own here. I was no longer working for my dad at the time. I was doing my studies, but I said I'm not going to go back. I'm going to do the same thing in the UK. So we gathered a few friends around, and long and behold, we built a very successful startup in IT. This is in the mid-90s, so IT was just at its infancy. The internet was just becoming public, so it was an opportunity for us, and then we got bought by another company, and one thing led to another, and I ended up years later.
Well, how did you break into that market in IT in London in the mid-90s? I mean, there must have been a lot of competition around then even.
Actually, it was, we wanted to serve the end customer. And we touched on what today people call CRM. At the time, it was not called CRM. It was just a customer database, yes, where we kept address, telephone number, and we decided that small companies couldn't build their own system or buy something very expensive. So we said we're going to build something easy and simple for small and medium-sized businesses, like the one we had. We were a 30-people business. Okay, and then we started using technologies that others have developed and put together a very compelling package, easy for small enterprises to adapt, and that was the start.
How difficult was it when you first started out with that business of your own? I mean, I once interviewed a man many years ago, an entrepreneur in the same business. He said he lived on carrots for 3 months because he had no money, just to keep himself going. What were your hard times?
I will tell you, we lived on milk and crackers
That was it.
for a number of weeks. No protein. It was luxury. But I think there's some compelling messages. And many of them came from my early interaction with the family business, yes. You gotta have the mean and the purpose and the vision at top of your mind, yes. So you have to make payroll at the end of the week. No matter what, you have to pay your staff, you have to pay the rent, okay. So when you go out and meet customers, you know that you have to be convincing, you have to be compelling, okay. What is the real need, okay? Why will they do this with you as opposed to someone else? And this was the driver in every customer interaction I had. And I've always believed in people. I wanted to take someone who had, let's say, an 80% capacity, and I wanted that person to be 120, 130%. And whoever I hired, no matter what the level was, I've always thought, can this person eventually succeed me? And I apply this rule throughout my whole career, even today.
And just any particularly strange sales pitches you had in those days? Because I know that sometimes people, they like the look of you, they don't like the look of you. That can determine how they feel.
Well, I will tell you, I've been kicked out of offices. I had situations where I had to walk back. My car, it was a long pitch, and my car was locked in a garage, and you know, you had to find your way back. So I've had all the craziness you could think of, and that craziness, you know, sometimes you think it gets easier, but I think the more complex your career becomes, the craziness becomes even bigger. And I have memories of trips in Central Asia, in Russia, and places where I never thought in my life I will find myself in. But you know, all of this is an amazing story and a bucket full of lessons.
Anyone that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, I remember Kazakhstan. I was working for SAP at the time. I was the managing director in Russia and the rest of the ex-Soviet Union countries. And I found myself at the border between Kazakhstan and Russia. And they accepted me to leave on foot Kazakhstan and catch a car on the other side. But the Russians didn't accept me to go in because they said I only have an air visa, not a land visa. So I spent 4 or 5 hours with people from Uzbekistan and other places of the world. It was a weird thing. I remember I had to climb a tree because it was the only place where there was mobile phone reception. And I was in a suit, and everybody was looking at me thinking, what are you doing here? But I remember that night I ended up in a gentleman's club, which was the only place open in Russia, and it was the only place where I could get something to eat, and it was a karaoke gentleman's club, and it was the only place that would serve food at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I had never been to a gentleman's club in my life before. It was my first visit, and I had a club sandwich at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that gave a different twist to the end of that day. So yeah, some amazing stories.
And probably sometimes you probably think, well, what am I doing with my life at these moments?
Absolutely, you know, and then you think about your friends who have a 9-to-5 job, and you know, they go back to their families early. But you know, these are some incredible stories. But I will also tell you that I cherish the moments because throughout these learnings you become a better man, and you're also able to help people around you, coaching them, guide them, mentor them, and you know, be surrounded by people that really strive to achieve things in life.
And now you're, as I say, you've got a fairly powerful position, Southern Europe, Africa and the Middle East, based in Dubai. What is the relationship you see between here and Africa and Dubai in terms of investment and business?
Firstly, Dubai is a hub. As a matter of fact, I think countries in Africa can benefit from the proximity with this hub. This hub is also a beautiful paradigm, because if you go back 25, 30 years, there was nothing in Dubai. Now, and you see, it only takes the vision of a leader Sheikh Ahmed in that case, or some hard-working people around him to create one of the world's best hubs. And I think this is a paradigm that many of the African countries can look up to. The willingness to do things, the success in economy, in infrastructure, in security, the achievements in innovation, and basically converting desert into such a popular place. I feel the links between Dubai and the whole of the African continent can only be beneficial for companies and countries.
And come October, it'll be the place to be. It'll be Expo 2020. The eyes of the world will be on Dubai. How much of a fillip is that likely to be for businesses like yourself based?
I got to take the opportunity, Chris, to say that we're a proud technology sponsor of Expo 2020. The whole experience will run on our systems. So your viewers and the visitors of Expo 2020 that will be there will get an opportunity to look at some of our cool innovations. But this is going to be a unique global customer event. And there's a lot of surprises, pavilions that are all very different to each other. It's going to be an unprecedented event, both for businesses and governments. I feel this is a unique opportunity for South Africa and some of the other nations here, certainly in Sub-Saharan Africa, to show their potential. Remember, we feel, and as a company, we're big investors in the continent. Yes, this is in a few years it's going to be a $30 trillion economy. The other important statistic is by 2050, half of the young people below the age of 25 will be in this continent. Now imagine the purchasing power, imagine the dynamics and the energy that this youth can bring on the table. So we feel strongly it's about time for Africa to switch the car on.
So you think that there's going to likely to be a lot more business people from here in Africa also looking to Dubai to travel and do business there, I think, in the next year?
Yes, absolutely. I would definitely encourage people to visit Expo 2020. I would encourage governments to take advantage of big corporations, big multinationals like ourselves being there, startups being there. So it's not just about the multinationals, it's also about the startups, it's also about the mid-sized businesses. Everybody has the opportunity and the platform to demonstrate what they can offer.
Now, Steve, you say you think Africa is a great opportunity for you at the moment, but it does have its constraints and problems. One of them is not only connectivity is scarce in many parts of the continent, also data has quite a cost on this continent as well. How is a company like yourself trying to deal with that?
So, as a leader, but also as a company, we look at the opportunity. Firstly, the challenges you mentioned are not unique to the African continent. Yes, at some stage, not too far back, many countries in Europe or Central Asia or the Middle East or even Asia have gone through exactly the same issues. And we were at the forefront of helping governments and organizations overcome such issues. I believe in Africa. I'll give you an example. You mentioned connectivity. You think about the adoption of mobile phones in the continent. There may not be fixed lines. There may not be fixed or wired internet, but there's mobile internet. There's mobile phone connections, more mobile phone connections than citizens. And that to me is an indication, it's a telltale that people want to leapfrog and take the available technology and move forward. Yes, it doesn't matter that we don't have wires. As a matter of fact, with 5G, we don't need wires. Yes, all you need is the cells.
You work with a lot of governments on this continent. What's the feeling you're getting about pragmatism? I mean, I've worked in Africa for more than 25 years. And when I first came here, from a business perspective, there was still a bit of mistrust of foreign investors and multinational companies, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think the situation is now?
I don't have the depth of your experiences, Chris, but I think we both see that the page is turning. We've been very consistent with our vision in Africa. We first came here in 1992. We remain strong. Today we have presence in the 5-6 main economies, and we're growing that. We're growing it also in Northern Africa and in Francophone Africa. But most importantly, here in Southern Africa, we feel that if the willingness, the political willingness is there, a lot of things can happen. Earlier in our discussion, I referred to Dubai, the UAE, but there's also other nations that where the political willingness is making miracles, like Saudi Arabia is another example. Pakistan is another example. Some of the countries in Southern Europe that managed to overcome deep financial crisis, and now they're growing. They have fast-growing economies, a lot of innovation, and these countries don't have neither the resources nor the youth and the potential that countries in Africa have. I'm very optimistic. As long as there's consistency in investments and how governments look at multinationals like us that are here to invest, okay, develop skills, help the population, raise their standards. You look at some of the issues we're experiencing in this country with power distribution. For me, this is something that you need the government to trust what companies like SAP have achieved in other parts of the world. Italy, Spain, Greece, Turkey, all of the Middle East, actually many countries in the African continent. We've resolved these issues.
Well, talking about power again, this country that you're in now, South Africa, it generates roughly about half of all the power generated on the continent, but it's struggling at the moment. It's a lot of people say the system's crumbling here. A lot of people say that it's having a meltdown. It can be a big problem for people like yourself. People can't get onto the internet. It halts business. Well, what can you do about that?
It's all about managing the infrastructure. When you've made investments, whether it was 5 years ago, a year ago, 20 years ago, you have an asset that is degrading and it needs maintenance. It's no different to a car. If you ignore your car, you don't take it for service, it will break down. And then what is the cost to your family? You can't take your kids to school, you can't go on holidays, or you can't go to work. Same thing with the assets of state-owned enterprises. They gotta be serviced, they gotta be maintained. You gotta have skillful labor on these assets, and you have to have the vision and the technology, and vision goes first. Technology enables the vision to understand how you're gonna serve your consumers. We've done this in many places. We're gonna be putting a very strong plan for how to help Eskom overcome this. I'm actually positive that.
How can you help Eskom? I mean, a company like yourself.
So a company like ourselves, we help companies like Enel or EDF or Saudi Electricity, Dubai Electricity, Portugal. So in all countries, I would say 95% of the utilities globally run on SAP. The problems that Eskom is facing locally are not unique to Eskom. Coals getting wet everywhere. Okay, I don't believe this is the only problem. We can't do anything about the weather, but we can do a lot of things about the assets. We can do a lot of things about the grid. We can do a lot of things with the skills of the people that operate the systems. We actually have a program which was invented in this country called Skills for Africa. And we're training people we're giving them an opportunity, either directly or via universities or schools, on how to become skillful white-collar or blue-collar workers using our systems. So trying to help the economy find the skill set it needs. And it's not just Eskom. It's a lot of state-owned enterprises that have the opportunity to move forward.
And despite all of these challenges we've talked about, you've made inroads into the continent, including a project that caught my eye in West Africa. You were trying to get people who'd never banked before to open a bank account using a cell phone. I mean, how difficult was that project?
We call this project Bank the Unbanked. I'm glad you mentioned it, actually, because it shows the willingness that people have in this country to turn the page. So in certain places there's no banks, there's no such thing as local branch, and there's no connectivity. But what there is a corner store, a convenience store, and everybody has a mobile phone. So we worked with a financial institution, and we gave the opportunity to the guy who's in the convenience store to help his consumers open up a bank account and do basic banking transactions on the spot using their mobile phones. And we no longer need a branch, and no longer need the infrastructure beyond the basic things that are out there. So it was a brilliant idea. It was a very simple but very impactful project.
And again, this issue of leapfrogging of technology in Africa, I mean, it's a phrase that's often thrown around at conferences, but do you think out there in reality that this is what we're going to see in the next 5-10 years?
Absolutely. I'll give you another example. Discovery. Discovery as a group, and you have a great visionary and innovator there that had an idea to start small but go global, and we're helping Discovery Bank and Discovery Health with our systems, and I will tell you, Discovery has amazing plans, very ambitious. They're becoming a global brand, and it's all about the vision and the boldness and the focus on your vision. How real are you about what you want to achieve?
And further afield, a story which a lot of car lovers would like to hear about, I'm sure. You also say you transform manufacturing in Italy at the Lamborghini motor car factory. What exactly did you do there?
Actually, this is an exciting project. Lamborghini had a lot of demand, but didn't have the capacity because they had a small factory, a boutique factory, I should say, to build many cars to meet the customer demand. So you had to wait more than a year to get a new car. And what we've helped them do is we helped them streamline their production, basically without expanding their current facilities, help them triple production. And it's all about real-time deliveries, real-time processes that help you fix cars faster. We've done the same thing with Harley Davidson. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why you see more Harleys in the street is because we've been behind them, helping them reduce the time to market. And we've done this significantly, down from a few days to a few hours, which means they can manufacture more and meet customer demand. This is why you see more Lamborghinis and more Harley Davidsons out there in the street. And despite these are big brands, but these are small companies. So it's interesting how you don't have to be a multi-billion conglomerate to use SAP. You could be a company of 50 people, or you could be a mid-sized company with a big brand.
In your career as a captain of industry, I mean, what do you think is the greatest thing you've ever learned?
The focus on people and the impact people have in our business. No matter, we're surrounded by technology, digitalization is everywhere, but it's all about people. And I feel personally, I've had the opportunity to work with my father early in my career, but some great CEOs later on, who helped me and coached me to become who I am today, and I feel obliged to help people grow.
What do you think you would have been if you hadn't have become a captain of industry? What do you think you would have done?
Although my background is in finance, I don't think I would ever be an accountant. I love interacting with people. I love meeting exciting customers and partners. I love traveling, which is why I spend a lot of time in Africa. So it would always be an engaging role. I think I just had the opportunity and I grasped it.
Any regrets?
None at all, none whatsoever.
What would you like to do in the future, maybe like as a legacy project?
The biggest legacy in my life is my family and how I help. With my wife, we have 3 kids and a dog. and I want to provide my family the best means to be able to achieve more than what my wife and I have achieved. This is the biggest legacy for me.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for in this edition of Captains of Industry. I'm going to speak to Steve Tzikakis. Now, he's the president for South Europe, Middle East and Africa for SAP, a technology company. From me, Chris Bishop, on this edition, it's goodbye.